Welcome to the Razors Inc. podcast with your host, Jonathan Farini. Think for a moment about movie remakes. While no one will mistake Guillermo del Toro's Pinocchio for Walt Disney's version, it begs the question, why even? And for each one of those, there's an Ocean's 11, which is arguably light years better than the original with the Brat Pack. So pour yourself a drink, pull up a chair, and hear Jonathan's take on movies, television, and today, remakes, for better and for worse. Here is your host, Jonathan Farini.
Film and television and media in general is my passion. I think a lot about it. And when I have a take or an angle or a slant on movies, television, or music, I want to share it with you in hopes that you might get something out of it. I want to talk about Cape Fear, and I'm going to do it in chronological order. So I want to talk about the 1962 film first. Gregory Peck plays an attorney.
8 years ago, I was a witness against a man. He was sent to prison. He's out now and blames me for his conviction.
And he's witness to a crime that Robert Mitchum plays a character named Max Cady commits and ends up putting Max Cady in jail. Max Cady's released from jail and is going to exact revenge on Gregory Peck's character by doing bad, unspeakable things to the wife and daughter of Gregory Peck's character.
You just put the law in my hands, and I'm going to break your heart with it.
I got a little plan for your wife and kid.
They're never going to forget. Never.
The film was shot in black and white for a reason. Shadows allude to the danger and the bad things that are impending for the wife and daughter. I think Gregory Peck had ownership of the book, and you have to understand he was coming off an Oscar win for Best Actor in To Kill a Mockingbird in 1960, just 2 years before. He was Atticus, the avenging attorney, the civil rights attorney. He nailed it. My point is he did not have to play this small-town prosecutor in Cape Fear. And in my opinion, Peck's version of the attorney, he's more intellectual and more like Atticus and less physical than what I'm going to talk about in the remake. And there are many, many actors that I believe could have done a better job playing this attorney than Gregory Peck. Let's talk about Max Cady, played by Robert Mitchum. Nobody could have done this role better than Robert Mitchum.
Hello, counselor. Remember me?
Robert Mitchum was not a method actor like Robert De Niro, who played Cady in the remake. Mitchum showed up, did his work, played good guys, bad guys. Was he a bad boy? Yeah. He was blessed with a very film-friendly face, that cleft chin, handsome guy, good physique. Man, he played good guys, bad guys, westerns, noir films, all of it. He actually played a medical student and a medical doctor in an old film called Not as a Stranger in 1955. But he is Max Cady and Mitchum is evil personified. He's got this calculating shark-like determination to ruin Peck's character's life by hurting the daughter and the wife. By the way, some of the exteriors were shot down in Savannah, Georgia. Robert Mitchum did not want to shoot down there because he was actually on a chain gang. I know Mitchum did a rap for pot possession. I think it was in the late 50s or early 60s. So he could play bad guys convincingly. I want you to check Robert Mitchum out in a 1955 film called Night of the Hunter. And he plays a preacher. Yeah, a serial killer preacher. And he's got this refrain, and it goes like this.
Leaning on the everlasting arms. Children. Children. Children.
Just listen to that. Just listen to him recite those words. And if the hair doesn't go up on the back of your neck, you must be under sedation. That's just his voice. Night of the Hunter. Martin Balsam adroitly plays the police chief, got no problems there, and Telly Savalas shows up, and he plays a private detective that Peck's character hires to get rid of Katie.
A type like that is an animal, so you've got to fight him like an animal.
So there's a scene where the police chief, they pull Katie in on some rap. Police chief says strip down, and Katie does it. I do not remember a single tattoo on Mitchum. Remember that. He's in great shape, but it's a very humiliating scene. And that humiliation combined with the menace that Katie's throwing out there, that Mitchum's portraying, that's facing the wife and daughter in this film, make it very provocative. So I just want to sum up. Robert Mitchum was aptly cast and made this movie what it was. You know, Polly Bergen played the innocent housewife. There was nothing provocative about her. Lori Martin played Nancy, the daughter. There was nothing provocative about her. Really, this film came down to Mitchum. Mitchum was the driving force. And as I've said already, I think Peck was just miscast. It didn't have to be a monodimensional film as far as acting is concerned. If we had had another actor played a less intellectual, more physical, average Joe type of attorney, then Peck, in my opinion, playing Atticus again.
Well, I've seen the worst, the dregs, but you are the lowest.
Let's talk about the 1992 remake. Do you remember that sleazy attorney played by William Hurt in the movie Body Heat? That's kind of Nick Nolte's approach to playing the attorney character in the remake. He's more of an average Joe type of attorney. He actually defended Katie as a public defender, and that's natural. That happens in everyday life. You know, you're a public defender, you get a stack of files, you do your best, but that's all you can do if you're a public defender. And he opens up this ire of Max Cady, played by Robert De Niro. So what I'm saying right off the bat is I'm preferring, believe it or not, Nick Nolte's approach more than I am Peck's as far as this attorney. It's just more believable to me, and it's less pompous. You don't have the baggage of this Academy Award for To Kill a Mockingbird. You're just taking Nolte's character as it is and working with it.
Counselor? Counselor? Is that you? Counselor? Come out, wherever you are.
Talk about De Niro. He's a method actor. I loved him in everything he did. To tell you the truth, I fell off the tracks with him in about 2000. I just did. But from Mean Streets to King of Comedy, Raging Bull, The Godfather, all that stuff, the guy reigns supreme in my opinion. Robert De Niro's acting ability did not require body paint in the form of tattoos from head to toe. So when he strips down in that scene, when they pull him into the police department, you're hit in the face with this body art. And I see it as a tool that's not necessary. It wasn't necessary with Mitchum. It just wasn't. Look for yourself. Make your own determination. What's going on? Why do you have to hit us in the face with all this body art? So what I'm telling you is I prefer Mitchum's portrayal of Katie to Robert De Niro's portrayal. And I'm preferring Nolte's portrayal of the attorney to Gregory Peck's. So what's your point, Jonathan? My point is I've got a foot in both worlds, the original and the remake. I think they really pushed the envelope having Max Cady meet and befriend the daughter of the attorney played by Nolte in the remake. Juliette Lewis played the daughter, and she had sex appeal, which was absent in the original. And Jessica Lange played the wife, and she has sex appeal that was absent in the original. In the original, the mother and the daughter played innocents. They did not exude sex appeal as they did in the sequel. And that made them more innocent and made Max Cady's menace and impending doom all the more palpable. And I think the sex appeal of the mother and the daughter in the sequel detracted from that. This sex appeal combined with the body art, I believe, is just indicative of the remake not having the cinematic chops as the original. What I'm saying to you is, when I really break it down, I wish they had just left the original alone. That's my personal opinion. Watch both of them. You can draw your own conclusions. However, I am attempting to give credit where credit is due by comparing and contrasting and its casting with the original. It's interesting in the remake, too, because Mitchum has a cameo as the police lieutenant.
Trouble is, poisoning a dog is just a fine. But if he's unemployed, you gotta have money, or we'll bust him for vagrancy. We'll give him a full-body strip search. Gee, I don't know whether to look at him or read him.
But, you know, the body art and the added sexuality of the wife and the daughter in the remake is really more than I really need to have to understand what the terror is and what the ramifications could be of Cady's revenge. Now, I want to go back to the original, played by Mitchum. You know, we're talking about method acting, and we're talking about actors and what they bring to the movie. But there's a scene where Cady, played by Mitchum, actually confronts the wife of the attorney.
Oh, now, come on.
If you touch me, you'll go back to prison for life.
You want to make a little bet on that?
But you will. I'm not like Nancy. I'm not afraid to testify. I swear it. You've got to believe me. I'm not afraid.
And this was completely improvised. So Mitchum grabs an egg from a tray. I believe the director ordered up some eggs. He anticipated some improvisation. And basically Mitchum grabs one of them, cracks it, and smears it all over her chest and really roughs her up. This is Polly Bergen. And Polly Bergen was totally surprised, totally caught off guard. And you can see it in her face. And she goes on to comment about it in subsequent interviews. So to sum it up, I've got a love-hate relationship with remakes. And I look at my relationship with sequels, and I find myself on both sides of the fence often, more often than not. So, for instance, I prefer the 1983 version of Breathless, starring Richard Gere, to the 1960 Jean-Claude Belmondo version. Hey, I went to film school. You know, the French New Wave was taught, and Truffaut and all those fellows, you know, they are up on Mount Olympus. But, you know, the 1983 version was shot in Vegas and shot in Southern California in English. And I could relate to it. I could definitely relate to that magnetism of Richard Gere. I was not a young man in 1960s Paris that could appreciate I could appreciate the black and white photography, but I was not there. So I didn't have firsthand knowledge. And I'm preferring the original Cape Fear 1962 version to the reprisal in 91. While I'm on the subject, you know, look at the original Hustler versus The Color of Money. There's no comparison. With respect to The Hustler, 1961, never again are you going to see a cast consisting of Paul Newman playing Eddie Felson, Jackie Gleason playing Minnesota Fats, Piper Laurie playing Sarah Packard, George C. Scott playing Burt Gordon. It's interesting to know Jake LaMotta played a bartender in that. Vincent Gardenia played a bartender in that. Nominations: Best Motion Picture, Robert Rossen; Best Director, Robert Rossen; Best Actor, Paul Newman; Best Actress, Piper Laurie; Best Supporting Actor, George C. Scott. And by the way, he refused the nomination. Best Supporting Actor, Jackie Gleason. Best Screenplay based upon material from another medium, Robert Ross and Sidney Carroll. It won Best Art Direction, black and white, for Harry Horner and Gene Callahan, and Best Cinematography, black and white, for Eugene Shufton. Piper Laurie plays this prostitute who works a train station, who meets Eddie Felsen. And Piper Laurie's performance is extraordinary. She just exudes fragility. And she's going to college at night, and she gets wrapped up in this world of pool hustling and manipulated by George C. Scott and held at arm's length. Paul Newman can't accept her love, and this life ultimately does her in. It's truly an amazing film, and why you would even want to even attempt a sequel is beyond my imagination. The Color of Money, 1986, starred Paul Newman. I think that's why it was made, and he won the Oscar for Best Actor. Do yourself a favor, go back and see The Hustler. Color of Money, incidentally, was a Martin Scorsese film, as was the reprise to Cape Fear. I get it. You know, the director is a film lover. He wants to bring these stories to a new generation of filmgoers. I applaud that. And he has the gravitas in Hollywood to do it. But if you go back and you watch Paul Newman's portrayal of the hustler, there's no comparison. There's no comparison in The Color of Money. Watch for yourself. And if you disagree, that's fine. You know, Steve McQueen, I can't say anything bad about Steve McQueen, except actors, evidently, who worked with him when I read biopics. 1968, Bullet came out. 1968, The Thomas Crown Affair came out the same year. I'm sorry, Steve McQueen is not Tommy Crown, wearing a three-piece suit with a Phi Beta Kappa key hanging from one of the buttons on the vest and running this business enterprise.
It's an interesting picture. Pays well, though, huh?
Depends on the return.
Sort of an American-type headhunter.
You could put it that way, yes.
And whose head are you after?
Yours.
Mine?
Yours.
The only time Steve McQueen is Tommy Crown is in the boardroom. And there's a meeting after Tommy sells a building to this group of guys assembled in the boardroom. And one of the buyers says, well, I'm paraphrasing, well, we finally bought a Tommy Crown building. And McQueen says, quote, you overpaid, unquote. That's Steve McQueen playing Tommy Crown. And then you cut to just outside the boardroom. Tommy Crown's assistant comes up and says, what next, boss? I'm paraphrasing. And McQueen says, get my name off the building and cancel the insurance. That is Steve McQueen playing Tommy Crown. But Pierce Brosnan, his smoothness in the remake, the 91 or 92 remake, I believe is really Tommy Crown. So I'm dancing with a love affair and a cringe affair with remakes. I come down on both sides. But go back and see Cape Fear. I suggest you watch the 62 version first, the original, and analyze them. Why is one working? Why is the other one not working? Look at the casting, look at the directing. See if the plot was tightened up or loosened up in the sequel. Just to sum it up, Cape Fear, the original, was all about Mitchum. He brought it, he owned it. And I preferred a more physical, average Joe attorney played by Nolte than the Gregory Peck's more intellectual, moral portrayal in the original. It did not require an actor of Gregory Peck's stature. In fact, coming off of Mockingbird and Atticus, it was the same character to me, and I think it was a distraction. By the way, they're actually, believe it or not, discussing a third Cape Fear. Listen, you know, for a second time, your argument to the studios, hey, I've got a successful track record of making films with you and other studios. I think we should introduce a third version to a new audience. And the boardroom and the C-suite says, absolutely. After all, Cape Fear is a known commodity. It has worked twice before. We will mitigate the potential of loss on this film. You know, there's no lack of original film scripts in Hollywood. There really isn't. There's some great stories out there in the slush pile, that's what they call it, that haven't been told, that deserve to be told rather than a third version of Cape Fear. If you can't find original stories to tell, there's always artificial intelligence, folks. And I call it plug and go. I'm sorry, but I think that's the direction we're heading. I hope I'm wrong. But until I see you next time, please leave behind a soft footprint. No tattoos required. And class is dismissed.
They say imitation is the sincerest form of flattery, and with movies, some results are spectacular, like The Departed, a remake of the Chinese film Infernal Affairs, or The Magnificent Seven, a remake of Kurosawa's Seven Samurai. But Nicolas Cage in the American remake of Bangkok Dangerous? There are far better uses for those 90 minutes, like getting a root canal. You've been listening to the Razors Inc. podcast with Jonathan Farini. Be sure to check out Jonathan's collection of fiction at the Jonathan B. Farini Story Collection at jonathanfarini.com. There you'll find everything from drama to romance, something for every reader, including his latest short story, California Area 13. That's jonathanfarini.com, Farini with 2 R's, 1 N. Or drop an email to razorsincpodcast@gmail.com.